Have you ever stopped and wondered what really sets the price of, well, anything? It's not just random, you know? There's this invisible engine, a kind of fundamental code that runs our entire economic world. So let's dive in and crack that code together. We're talking about supply and demand. And it all starts with a question you might ask yourself pretty much every morning. Why does this simple cup of coffee cost 3, 4, maybe even $5? The answer isn't just one thing. It's this incredible, dynamic balancing act between two really powerful and totally opposing forces. So first up, let's look at the buyer's side of this whole equation. This is where we meet the first major player in the story. You, the consumer. All of your individual choices, when you multiply them by millions of other people making similar decisions, create this massive economic force we call demand.
I mean, really think about it. Every single time you decide whether that coffee is worth it at that price, or if you're just going to walk away, you're essentially casting a vote with your wallet. That simple personal choice is the absolute bedrock of demand. It's step one in this entire process.
And all those little choices lead us to a core principle in economics, the law of demand. Honestly, it's super intuitive. When your favorite coffee spot jacks up its prices, you'll probably buy it a little less often, right? But if they have a big sale, you might stock up. It's that inverse relationship. Price goes up, the amount people buy goes down. Simple as that.
But what's really cool is why this happens. There's a fancy term for it, diminishing marginal utility. But all it really means is this. That first coffee of the day, oh, it's amazing. It's everything. A second cup is still pretty good, but not as life-changing. A third, you could probably take it or leave it. Each extra cup gives you a little less satisfaction, so you're willing to pay less for it. Okay, but you and your wallet are only half the story. To get the full picture, we've got to flip the script and meet the second character in this drama, the seller. The one on the other side of the counter who brings us the force of supply. Now, the law of supply is basically the mirror image of demand. It just works in the complete opposite direction. For the person who owns the coffee shop, higher prices are a great thing. The more they can charge for a cup of coffee, the more motivated they are to make and sell it. So it's a direct relationship. Price goes up, and the amount they're willing to supply also goes up. And the reason for this is dead simple: incentives, specifically profit. Higher prices are like a green light for a business. It means they can cover all their costs, the beans, the rent, the staff, and still make more money on every single sale. This encourages them to produce more, and it might even encourage new coffee shops to open up down the street. So, here we have it, the fundamental conflict of the marketplace. You can see the tension right here. You, the buyer, are pulling for the lowest price you can possibly get. And the seller, they're pulling for the highest price they can get. It's a total tug-of-war. So with both sides pulling in opposite directions, how on earth is a price ever actually decided? Well, this is where the market works its magic. It's right here, in this clash between the two opposing forces of supply and demand, that they perform a kind of balancing act that ends up setting the price for almost everything we buy. This perfect balancing point is called equilibrium. You might also hear it called the market clearing price, and that's a perfect name for it, because it's that one magic price point where the number of items people want to buy is exactly the same as the number of items sellers want to sell. Nothing's left over, and nobody's left wanting. It's balanced. Let's make this real. Imagine a car company launches a new luxury model for $200,000, but at that price, they're just sitting on the lot collecting dust. That's a surplus, an oversupply. So what do they have to do? They've got to drop the price. Maybe it comes down to $150,000, and boom, buyers start showing up. They've found that sweet spot, the equilibrium, where the number of cars they're making is exactly the number people are ready to buy. But here's the plot twist. That perfect balance, it almost never lasts forever. The real world is messy, and it's constantly throwing curveballs that knock the market out of whack. So let's talk about what happens when the whole game changes. All right, this next part is absolutely critical to understand. First thing, if only the price changes, like, say, a temporary sale on coffee, we just move up or down along the curve that already exists. The basic desire for coffee, or the coffee shop's ability to make it, hasn't actually changed. But what happens when something fundamental out in the real world changes? Well, that's where it gets really interesting. These big external events don't just nudge us along the old path. They redraw the entire map. The entire curve actually shifts, creating a whole new reality for buyers or for sellers.
So, what kind of things can shift demand? Oh, lots of stuff. If a whole bunch of people get a raise, that's a change in income, and they might buy more coffee at any price. If a new health study comes out saying coffee is amazing for you, that's a new trend. Even if the price of tea, a substitute, goes through the roof, more people will probably switch to coffee. All of these things change the basic math. And what about the other side? What can mess with supply? Well, if a new super fast espresso machine is invented, that's a technology boost. But if a terrible frost in Brazil wipes out the coffee bean harvest, that's a huge blow to production. Even something like the government adding a new tax on coffee beans makes it more expensive to produce. Each of these events shifts that entire supply curve.
Here's a perfect real-world chain reaction we've all seen: gas prices. So the price at the pump skyrockets, right? Well, that high price sends a massive signal. It's a huge incentive for oil companies to go out and find more oil. They invest in exploration, they drill more wells, and eventually, the overall supply of gasoline starts to increase to meet that new price. Okay, so once you start to get this framework, this dance between demand, supply, and that equilibrium point, you seriously start to see it everywhere you look. It's like you've been given the decoder ring for how the economy works.
And this is the main takeaway. This is not just some dusty theory from a textbook. This is the live operating system running in the background of our world. The price of your phone, the cost of your groceries, even the salary for a certain job. It's all determined by this constant dynamic dance between what people want and what's available. And that's why this matters so much. When you hear on the news about a housing shortage or see a sudden price spike for something like eggs, you now have the tools to understand why it's happening. You can actually see the invisible forces of supply and demand shifting and struggling to find a new balance.
So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you can see the code, now that you can see these invisible forces, what's happening out there right now that might be about to shift the supply or demand for the things that you care about? What's the next big change you can see coming just around the corner?